Hello and welcome to another episode of On Fire here on Daily Mirror Online. Today we have a special program. We are coming to you from Galle Face, where there is a mass protest that has been taking place for over 2 weeks now. And the protests have of course been with regards to the issues faced by the public, a demand. The demand is for the president to step down. Today on the program I have with me Vraie Balthazaar, an activist and a researcher, and Amalini De Sayrah, who is a journalist and is also doing a lot of research, especially on minority issues. Thank you, ladies, for joining me on the program. So, Rai, I would like to start with you about this whole protest that we're seeing right now. A lot of people from various backgrounds and communities have been gathering here. What has pushed everyone to come to Galle Face and take a stand on one particular issue?
So I think, Easwaran, you have both. I think what initially pushed people was an economic crisis, right? When you don't have electricity, when you don't have gas, when you don't have access to essentials, I think it really does change the dynamic of your home. And there were various triggers along the way which then pushed people into being here. But there's also a political crisis, right? And I think subsequent to these two go hand in hand. And so because of that, I think more than just only a political crisis or only an economic crisis, having these two going hand in hand is what brings in, I think, more people, because people are relating to it on different levels, on a very personal level, and also understanding in some cases the bigger picture and wanting to, like the constitutional crisis, for instance, was very much a political issue, not an economic issue. So those who understood that only engaged, there were many of us who engaged in the 52-day, that struggle, but it was very much about a political struggle. But this time, it's also, it measures along with the economic crisis, which is also very personal, I think, irrespective of where you're from or your background, but it affects people very differently. But I think everyone in some level feels that pinch, again, diverse spectrum, but you feel it differently.
But the past, we've had these sort of issues, right? The economic issues, maybe not to this scale, but we've had issues. But we've never seen people coming and, setting up tents and being permanent at a location and protesting overnight as well. Is this something that has been building up, that has eventually led to this, or you think that this was spontaneous? Suddenly, people just decided, okay, let's take to the streets?
I think for people to kind of say it's spontaneous is kind of minimalizing the actual work that went into all of this, right? I am here at Galle Face, and I have been for the last 18 days through the SYU, which is a youth wing of the JVP. And I know that the NPP and the JVP have for years, but especially in the last couple of months, actively engaged in talking about corruption, in talking about the economic crisis, right? And I know other opposition parties have also been doing the same. And there have been also multiple kind of protests and discussions, and all of these, I think, is then it kind of set the pace for then this kind of eruption. I think Mirihana was very much a very explosive point in time when people realized that there is power, there is people's power. And I think that has been instrumental in people understanding that, okay, I also can come here, I can also say something, and my voice will be heard. And what you see around us is very much a collective of organizations, of trade unions, of individuals, of civil society organizations, and of political parties coming together in one space and saying, power to the people.
Do you think that this struggle or this protest or demonstration will continue the way it has from the start? We seem to be seeing a situation where it's sort of dying down. Do you think it will die down, or do you think it will continue?
So I think you will find it's not dying down necessarily, but it's changing. I think when we came here initially, if you look at if you came here in the first 2-3 days, it wasn't very organized as it would. These are new spaces that we're all trying to build. It's understanding of owning space, of figuring out what you want to do, of how you can engage. And I think, in building this very, very diverse gamma, as it were, there are things that have now, are a little more centralized. There's a lot more communication amongst individuals and organizations in trying to build this space. So I think in that sense, I think I think it's the dynamics have changed, but it's not necessary to say that it's completely dying down. Obviously, there are people who came in the first few days because of their interest, because it was during a holiday season and so on. But that's not to say that that's the only crowd coming. There are people who are now more committed to coming. And actually, what I am seeing, and I'm sure Amalini would also see this, is one of the most interesting things is the level of commitment of the young people in not just camping out here, but even beyond. I think in some of the spaces that you can't see to camera, but being permanently here and finding ways to support, and then also organizing better support and better infrastructure for the groups. So I don't think it's going to die down, but it's not just about holding the space here, Easwaran. I think it's also trying for us to try to figure out what next, right? And maybe that's something we can talk about later.
Yeah.
What happens if Gota doesn't go home, which is our collective call, what next? How do we maintain these spaces? What do we do? So those all, I think there is no common consensus here amongst the organizers. Like I said, at the outset, we are all a part of a bigger picture. We are all kind of doing our part and trying to see how we cohesively fit together. But there is a discussion on what next, and that's not a common consensus.
Okay. Amalini, I know you've been speaking to a lot of people here, you've been documenting the issues that they've been facing. What are the core issues that, some of the people, especially the young people, have been telling you?
I think, like Vraie said, we are all here at this moment because everybody across the board is feeling the pinch of an economic crisis, without fuel, without power, without, and in an abstract, maybe not even in an abstract sense, without the ability to plan a future here, to see a future in this country. That I think that has pushed a lot of people to the road, and we saw a protest, I think, a couple of days ago by the students of the Easwaran University, where there was a coffin marked the dreams of the youth, and they were carrying a funeral for it. So I think that's also like a decisive factor where young people who want to believe that they can have a future in their motherland essentially are feeling like that's not the case. So as many of them are participating here, you see so many again at the foreign ministry looking for ways to leave. So I think like across the board, definitely the concern is that you can't live a stable or secure sense of secure life because of the economic crisis. Day to day, if you are going to be having to stand in line, if you can't do work properly, if you can't earn, and if the money you earn means nothing at the end of the day, that is like an overarching, something people are feeling across the board, some more than others. But I think we can get into this in detail, of course, but there are definitely groups who are here or who are resisting in other parts of the country because they can't come here, who have more kind of additional demands. Like they want the Rajapaksas held accountable for this crisis, but they have very specifics as to previous, violations of rights or previous violence against them that they also want this government and this family regime held accountable for.
But do you think, from what you've been gathering when speaking to people, do you think a change in the administration would actually bring a change in what the people are going through?
I can't speak. I can't speak right now, without knowing what that administration would look like. Because I feel like anyone can make promises and come into power. This is happening because people made promises, came into power, and then completely, did not fulfill them. So it's hard to say, but I feel like there is. I feel like there is an understanding. There has been an understanding all along that why are we always stuck with this same set of politicians who don't really provide us with the real kind of full kind of life that we deserve as humans, as citizens of this country. And now is really a tipping point where people are like, we have actually had enough. So I'm hoping that maybe this stage, this will provide us with this will give people a chance to maybe give different faces in politics a chance. And we can only hope that those politicians will have learned from the lessons of the past issues and learn from people's voices on these stages when they are formulating their ways forward.
And something else that is being said quite often with regards to this protest or demonstration is that this has brought a lot of people together, various communities, various sections of communities as well. Do you see that unity from when you go around, when you speak to people? Do you see that something that we didn't see maybe years back? Some that sort of unity, people working together, people from different communities, different classes working together here.
For sure, we see it happening here. Like you do see people of all ethnic groups, all classes, even definitely engaging in either organizing learning spaces or organizing food to people, keep people fed. So you see people coming together here, and I don't want to undermine that in any way, because that is actually wonderful. And I have heard so many people from minority religious communities who said, we may not have felt safe protesting out in public for our rights earlier, but there is a slight sense that, okay, in this crowded golf face, we can actually say, we don't want the Rajpaksas around, and that there is, we are less likely to face backlash because of it. So yeah, there is, I would say, there is diversity in this space. Everybody is definitely coming from across the board to get involved. So does the participation translate into something bigger beyond that? Remains to be seen, but there is wide participation, that's for sure. That's definitely, yeah.
Right. The other thing that a lot of people are talking about, or not a lot of people, but a few people are talking about is, where is the money coming for all this? How are people managing to, set up tents, get food, water, all this? From your, experience here, what are you hearing?
So I think, again, I can't speak on behalf of everybody here, and I can't vouch for everybody here either. But I do know that a lot of these groups, they are either coming as individuals or civil society organizations, and there are the trade unions, political parties like ourselves, which obviously then for people like us, or for groups like us, it's a little more obvious that we are getting support from people who also understand our cause and who believe in our messages. And I think it is the same for many, many people here. I also think that there is a huge, for those who may not be able to engage and protest, one of the ways in which they feel like they can contribute is through supporting someone to manage the toilets for multiple days, or supporting someone, 4 or 5 tents, or helping someone pay for a sound system, or just bringing in food stuff for 2 or 3 days. And I think that kind of support is what you're seeing here, which I know is not traditional. So there's always a bit of curiosity and also nervousness about how these things are funded, right? It is not to say that
there is no foreign hand, there is no NGO involvement.
No, I mean, to be honest, so if you're looking at these civil society organizations, a lot of them could also be considered in. There are NGOs here, there are various organizations here, and there might be people who receive funding from overseas as well. I can't vouch and speak on behalf of everyone, like I said, but I think there are monies coming in from well-wishers. And that I think is the way in which it's predominantly being funded. But if you're looking at like this space here, you'll also notice that it's not very luxurious. So it really is. I mean, I think the things that are expensive are like the sound setups, the generators. Those are the tents that I think need a little more support. But if you look at the others, it's really very minimalist. So if you have a tent, you're here, you're supporting, so I'm not necessarily buying into the entire conspiracy theory on this one.
If I can just mention that there is also, like I see it on social media, where people are like, oh, instead of giving money to people who are just chilling at golf face, why can't you give that money to the poor? And I have to say that across the board, Sri Lankans are donating and supporting people who are in dire need as well. So it's unfair to say that no one is doing that while this is happening, because people are starving because of these bad economic decisions, and it is again people who are coming through to help them. So it's a bit unfair to play that game.
I think the sideline, exactly, I'm just going to add on, like to say protesters aren't deserving is problematic, because it's such a commitment, as I said before, Easwaran, it's such a commitment to be here. I mean, it's not like everyone who is here is unemployed. There are people who are employed, who've made the time. Some who may have even by now lost their jobs, to be able to be here, to be able to support people's commitment, I think is something that we can collectively do. And if people are willing to do that, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, we see a lot of people coming even after work, or in the morning it might be less, but after work a lot of people are coming. And we see some major establishments also issuing statements now saying that they're supportive of the cause, not the cause, but supportive of their staff coming and standing out. Whether I mean, some are questionable. Yes, I see a smile which I cannot see behind that mask, but I know Amalini has some other thoughts on that. But do you see even the corporate sector also like getting involved in this whole push for change, or is it just a handful?
I would say the best way to help for the corporate sector to help through this, to help people in this moment of need, would be to start with your employees, start in how you're paying them, in the freedoms you give them in their workplace to organize and gain power through that. And that's, I mean, it's a good place. I mean, I suppose it's good that you are taking the somewhat risk to put out a statement and say we stand with the protesters or something to that effect. But you can, I mean, I feel like the best way to start, where something I heard from a lot of people is the cost of living is rising, but our salary is staying the same.
Yeah.
So the best way the corporate sector can at this moment actually help the staff, the people, that they say they stand with the people, start with your staff. Yeah, that would be really
I wanted to ask you, Amalini, like since you've been documenting a lot in the minority issues as well. I'm hearing this being said in some parts of the north that okay, this is your struggle in the south, not our fight. Is that something that you've heard as well?
Look, I feel like across the board, people are affected by this struggle. There is a fuel queue in Jaffna, there's a fuel queue in Akarepattu as much as there's a fuel queue in Colombo. But at the same time, yes, I mean, the struggles of especially Tamil communities in the north and the east have against the Rajapaksas, asking for the Rajapaksas to be held accountable, go back a year, go back a decade, multiple years, So I feel like for them, they're looking at us and being like, now you get it, right? Everything that we've been talking about up to this point about how they are violent and unfit to kind of lead the country, now you are getting it. And I don't blame them if they feel like, we have done the work for years and maybe now it's time the South and their voter base, the people who actively voted for them, the people who looked at all of those violations against, say, the Tamil and Muslim communities and thought, but, maybe he can develop the country or something. I don't blame if those communities see that and see those people activated and they're like, yes, maybe now it's the time that you got to the road, because like we've seen before, mothers of the disappeared from the end of the war or from the period leading up to that, protested for consecutively 3 to 4 years by the side of the road, the same thing in the hot sun next to a main road, and were given like maybe 1/8 of the attention, one-eighth of the political attention and media attention that this is getting, right? So I feel like definitely, like I think Vraie said this at the start, where there are so many struggles that have led up to this moment, from those mothers resisting that to last year when the Muslim community came out to say, we please don't cremate our loved ones against our faith on, completely unscientific grounds. There are so many struggles that have led up to this point around the same call of, holding the Rajapaksas accountable. So while I feel like it's important for the folks here, and I'm not sure if it's happening, but it's important for the folks here to, I feel like, hear all those voices and take it into account if we are really going to have not just the family going home, but an end to all the kind of systems that allowed them to gain so much of power as well. Because if they go home and we are still left with kind of, these structures, these problematic structures, the racism and the ethno-nationalist, supremacy built into our foundations, then it leaves space for another leader to take advantage of that and to weaponize it against the communities who've already been vulnerable. So that work needs to be done here. I don't know if it's happening. I don't know. It may be happening and I may not know of it. Like Vraie said, there's so much happening that we can't take account of all of it.
But then this struggle can also draw more attention to the issues faced by the people in the north in the past and even now, right?
Absolutely, exactly. And if there was ever a moment to talk about those issues, I feel like it is now.
And are people talking about those issues here? I mean, do we see it all again, like, with just the families that have disappeared? Or do you see others, right? Like, others also talking about those issues now that we see, these communities also coming here and joining and supporting this cause?
I see things happening on both levels, but maybe on different paces or two different paces, because you have this immediate need, which is trying to send the president home, trying to send a government home, and then also figure out what to do next. What happens if this doesn't work? Then what do we do? Or if he does go home, then what happens? And these conversations around no confidence motions or impeachment or possible elections. So there are multiple ways in which people in this very space are looking at it. But at the same time, you also have these conversations on minority concerns. You also have the conversations on language, there are so many other conversations. And I think what's interesting is you have groups that wouldn't traditionally always necessarily want to work together, in some sense because of the dynamics of this space, having to work together, which includes civil society organizations, certain political parties that they may not usually kind of have to work with. And I think that integration is allowing, as Amalini very rightly said, it's allowing for people to have these conversations which are necessary. But those paces might be different, because obviously the immediate need is one thing, and then all of the other things are also seen as, for some, slightly secondary, for some things that have to go alongside. So I think it's also a matter of perception, on perspective, and on people's own kind of need to see that cause through. But it is certainly a very, very interesting time for young men and women, for the youth to be here and to be able to attempt to hold those concepts, because of the fact that this has become in some sense a media epicenter.
Now is the time.
Now is the time, because also you have a lot of the other struggles from around the island now wanting to come here because of the media that it gives. As you quite rightly said, families of the disappeared, there are all these conversations I had before which they may not have been given the same space, are physically here now, occupying a space not too many tents away from very pro-nationalist groups. So these are very, very different dynamics that we've also never encountered, and we're going to have to learn to not necessarily work together, but find a way to have certain conversations even as uncomfortable as they are.
And we see, I've seen this, I've seen on boards and stuff, politicians try to divide us by ethnicity, but now we're standing together. And I remember after Taminder was killed in Ramukkana by the police, there were these posts on social media that said, translated to roughly, if they are doing this to us in the south, imagine how it would have been in the north. And I'm really hoping that just these kind of statements, that these are more than just statements or placards, and that people will actually spend some time reflecting on what that means, what it means for citizens to have lived through years of violence by the same actors in this regime, and for them to extend that solidarity in a meaningful way that's more than just, let us just get numbers to Galle Face. I'm hoping that, again, like Rai said, that we use this really unique space to have some of those discussions.
Will these discussions continue when after there is let's say there is an administration change? Do you think that these discussions will continue, or okay, Galle Face, now it's done, now we go back to our normal lives? Do you think?
My opinion is that some may choose to continue have discussions, some may not. It might be a sense of solidarity and trust that may last them through for many, many more years. There is no cohesive yes or no. I think that is the exact, that is both the beauty and the struggle of the space that we are in right now. That there isn't a consensus. So there may be conversations, and I think for people like us, conversations are very much a part of changing things, but it's not so for everybody, and we can't expect that. But I think it'll be interesting to see how we can move forward.
What are people saying here? I mean, we're hearing a lot now these days that the president is saying he's not going to step down. The prime minister has said he's not going to step down. Obviously, that message has gone across to all those who are out here, who are, have been here for days and days. what are they saying? Like, if these two leaders don't step down, if the change that they are expecting doesn't happen, what happens here?
Again, I can't speak on behalf of everybody.
Yeah.
I can give you two blocks of answers. One is the stance of where I come from politically,
Yeah.
and the other stance is that obviously there is some kind of collective involvement, which also then involves not just now. We've had this conversation at Golface for 18, as at today, 18 days. How do we amplify this, and how do we garner more support? And I think that's when trade unions come in. The last time we had a general strike was in 1980. But I think now they're looking at bringing in the trade unions, and there is potential for that to be massive because it's looking at all trade unions across the board, and also the involvement of both the private and the public sector, which I think again in our era we may have not seen. So that I think is to be seen. That's on the 28th. And so we can, and then there's also a Hartal plan for the 6th. And of course, we have to then see, and because that also then that message has to be taken out by individuals who also want to partake, not necessarily saying, okay, it's a job of the unions, but also saying, okay, it's my job also. I will report to work, and my work will be as a protester, right? And also owning that. And I think those are the dynamics that will really change and amplify this space here, and to push it to something that we all collectively want. And I think people have to take responsibility also. It's not just those camping out here and holding fort here. It's not those political parties who've been anyway saying this for years. It's also the job of every individual now to figure out how they can get involved. So Hartal, you can, from wherever you are, you can have your black flags up. You can find a way to contribute, right? So both so that's one portion of the answer. The second portion is for us, we are also talking about, as NPP, we are also talking about if he says he's not leaving, if the president says leaving. So in the structure of how we'd like for it to happen, the president would leave. There needs to be a change in government. A shuffle in government isn't a change in government, even though they seem to think that it's easy to fool the people are no longer being fooled. And then in some sense to have a short-term interim government on the condition that those first two conditions are met, and then to go in for an election. But this is again, like I said, the stance of those of us who are part of the NPP, and the SYU here is representing that voice. But it's not to say that it's a collective voice of everybody else here. We are a small part of a much larger picture.
Do you, since you've been talking about the NPP, right, there's this school of thought that, politicians are not bringing about the sort of change that, the public want. But then, without politicians, how do you administer the country? What sort of message can you give to the people who are saying, we are sick of everyone, of every politician?
So this is a really good question because it's a question that I think we also, those of us in the political space and politicians, find it very difficult. I'm also going to say this 225, we don't want the 200, is a narrative that was used to bring Gotabaya into power.
Yes.
And now we're seeing it again. And that's no coincidence, right? Because it's very easy to dilute the voice of an entire opposition by saying, well, they are no different to us, right? What we have is an economic crisis that is fueled by a political crisis. If it's a political problem, you need to have a political solution. You cannot be apolitical. And I think people are confusing being apolitical and non-partisan. You can be non-partisan now. I understand that not everybody has decided who they want, because there is a lot of mistrust. Years and years of mistrusting the system, right? But I think you may want to really take the time to understand constitutional framework, to understand who these people you may have voted for, you may not voted for, who look like they could be offering something that really does resonate with you. So I don't think we can look at a totally non-political solution. You need to be able to engage with, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to hold your representative, your official accountable. This is it, right? If you voted for somebody who is now still backing this regime, hold them accountable. I'm not saying that you need to go and stand in front of their house, but there are multiple ways to hold people accountable, and that becomes our job as citizens, right? And as politicians, it becomes our job to find ways to engage with you. And I think it's not only just crossing out a vote. I think that engagement between people and their representatives is something that continues and must continue on a daily basis. But don't push it aside and say this is a totally non-partisan thing. Nobody cares. We don't care for politics. It's a political problem. Political solutions are absolutely necessary.
Amelie, finally, I just want to ask you also about this, criticism about the way some people here are trying to communicate the message. It's being termed by certain individuals as being a beach party or a carnival. Because at night, of course, we see a lot of people singing, dancing, using various slogans. What's your take on that?
So my answer to people who are making these claims about a beach party and a carnival is to, if you are able to come here and to walk inwards from just the main road, because the struggle and like that show of people power that we are here and we are going to be loud about it is of course happening on the main road. But I urge you to walk in there and just, a friend of mine used this phrase a couple of weeks back where, there was an opportunity for complete rebellion and anarchy right now, but people have set up like a village that sustains and supports itself and supports each other. And that is an incredible thing, So I urge these people to come in and take a look. There is a library that has expanded exponentially over the 2 weeks and people are reading and relaxing there. There is a university where people come and discuss, people come and listen to other people, talking about economic and political issues and solutions. There is a citizens forum where anyone can come and have their voice heard. There is a hospital,
It's almost like a city within a city.
It is a city. It is a city within a city, and people are supportive of each other. You walk through at lunchtime, you'll be asked by 5 different people, have you had lunch? Because they want to offer you some food. So I urge, of course there is an atmosphere of, I want to say that there is hope. That's where this party atmosphere is coming from, people on the streets and, taking up space and saying, I want my voice to be heard, I'm going to be loud about it, and so be it. And I feel like that's a political act in itself, just standing outside the president's office in this massive space that was, extending up to what was once a high security zone, what has actually become a high security zone again. And just taking up this space and being like, we are not leaving until you do. That is an act of resistance, I think, that, creating this sense of, creating that kind of what they call a carnival in this space of, very austere, very corporate and political, on that backdrop. But at the same time, there's so much of discussion spaces happening here. And that is part of, I think, again, like another level of the resistance where people are educating themselves, educating each other. So it's more than just, the parade it may look like on the road. And there are so many pieces that just change from day to day. Like you can come in the morning and come in the evening and there'll be 2 different new installations, or the same installation would have morphed. Just to take time and to come and look at the various pieces of art that people have put up. To talk to the people who are volunteering in the library, to talk to the people who are running the university, and just understand that people are not here as a joke. Like Rai said earlier, people are not just here. They are here for something. And if you are going to write the protest off as just, people having fun, you clearly haven't understood, one is what's happening here, and 2, like what people actually want. So, yeah.
I'm going to add on to that, and I completely agree with you, but I'm also going to say people should also be allowed to have fun.
Yes.
Resistance comes in many forms, in song, in dance, through art, through writing, through poetry. And why not, right? Why not have those spaces, and to be able for everybody to come and hold that space in the way in which they can be a part of it. There are people who are writing slogans, there are people who are writing stories, there are people taking pictures, there are people here who are dancing. I think that is what makes this such a rich, diverse background for us to work in, right? For us, it is you have that bigger picture and you have this common motive, but there are different ways, and I think we're all big fans of this idea that there are different kinds of resistance. Sure. And to just generalize it and say you're having fun and there's no truth to it, I think is a way to delegitimize the incredibly important work that's happening here right now.
Right, with those thoughts, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you, Rai. Thank you, Amalini, for joining us on this program today. And that's all the time we have for you for On Fire this week. Till next time, stay safe.